Hey everybody, Mr. West here. Oops. Wanted to do a little build video for you on how I built the Delta Wing, which I flew the Maiden, and the Maiden went really well. I'm very pleased. My first successful maiden voyage of a Delta Wing, but it's not my first build. I've built 3 others and I had nothing but trouble with them. And I kind of got discouraged and gave up, honestly. So I started out with some information that I found on that particular wing style, and 30 degrees angle seemed to be a common thread. So I built the Delta based upon a 30-degree angle, and I had a big chunk of black foam board, which is this material here. This is the Office Depot or Staples, nice and rigid, and I prefer these as my core, especially if you're doing a wing. So I'm using it as a core like this, and there's virtually no spar reinforcement in this build, and I've discovered that it doesn't need it. It turns out quite rigid, and as a unit with the hot glue and everything, it works really well. So I'll get into how I built this KFM4. It's probably kind of obvious, but I'll show you the step-by-steps. And I do a lot of my work in the flat, meaning so my Dollar Tree foam board is here so that I can have this. So rounded over, nice leading edge, so sweet material for that. And then everything else, including these step-ups, these spacers here, are of the blackboard, obviously. And the blackboard is quite rigid, so these are acting as spars. I'll show you how I put those on. Alright, so you're going to start with some number, and I used the CG wing calculator online. You'll find that. Just Google CG wing calculator, and then plug in your numbers. Let's say you want a 48-inch wing, so you plug in 48-inch wingspan, and then you want something like 12 to 14-inch main chord in the center, and then about a 6-inch, in all cases about a 6-7-inch tip chord is pretty cool. On mine I did a 5-inch, 5.5 actually. So it really doesn't matter. I would say around 6 is a good number, and 14 as a main. So you plug that in, and then it will tell you based upon excuse me. It'll tell you based upon your selection down below whether you want to use a safe number, which is a CG forward nose heavy at 15% choice. And then you have 2 other selections. 25% and another, I think there's another selection, can't remember. Anyway, so 25% meaning it's going back further. So 15 is further forward. It's going to be very nose heavy, safe, and then you start moving backwards, and the 25% is labeled as expert, the 15 is labeled as beginner or experimental aircraft. So in my opinion, the 15% beginner experimental is way too nose heavy. Seriously, especially for a wing. You will need a lot of throws on your deflection on your elevator, elevons rather, and it'll probably nose into the dirt every time, and that's probably why I was so discouraged with my other 2 wings, is because I set it up based on that, and I was very accurate on making sure that I was right at that CG mark, and it was just disastrous. So I took a chance based on that experience to go with the 25%. So somewhere in between, I set up my CG for, let's say, 20%, maybe a little more. So I'm about 3/8 of an inch behind the 15% mark. Okay, so how I built this wing and the material that I use. So I've stated already, this is the stiff board as the core of the Delta wing. And let me look at the Delta wing for you real quick, or show you the Delta wing. There's the Delta wing, and the center section, the black, goes all the way from the trailing edge, including the elevons, all the way through to the leading edge. And right at the leading edge, I have glued on the barbecue bamboo skewers, and I'll show you how that applied as well. So then we have, ideally I would have done this in Dollar Tree foam here. This is also the good stuff. I didn't have enough of the Dollar Tree foam board on hand, and they were out at my local store. I would have folded it here, and it would have turned out essentially the same, but a little different. Not much different. So this one is probably a little heavier and a little stiffer, stronger here in these squeezable areas. These are not supported in any way on the inside. The Dollar Tree foam board would flex a lot more. You have to be more careful when you grab it. So then there's a center plate here, and then you have the steps. I'll show you how that all works out here in just a minute. So that's what it's going to look like, is that bird over there. Okay. So I did this previously, so we'll put that aside, and I'll show you how I did it from scratch. And how I do my my builds is I like to do my flat work, as much flat work as I possibly can. So if I'm doing an Armin, wing, Ed at Experimental Airlines has some great build videos there about how to do this. So I won't get into the Armin wing design so much, but you see the elements are the same. When this is not folded, I do all of my flat layup work. I'll glue this locator block here, I'll glue my spar in, I'll glue this locator block in next, I'll glue the Dollar Tree bamboo skewers and the leading edge, and I'll just overlap them as I go. Don't use a lot of hot glue there, not much at all. And I glue it right onto the seam, the fold. Let me show you what I mean. Nice tool also at Dollar Tree. Peel that off right there. That's how easy this stuff works, is you're able to peel the inside off. Whereas with the expensive foam board, the rigid stuff, this does not peel off. It just will not. And you'll fight it. You'll try to do it, and it's not going to work at all. Just don't. So then what I have here is I have the score line, and I'll lightly glue this skewer along the whole length of the panel, and usually it's a 30-inch panel that we're working with, right? The foam boards are 30-inch wide, so I'll just gently, not gently, but lightly glue these skewers here, and eventually what we'll end up with is this is going to be folded over it like so. Okay? So right at or just in front of that score line being right there, hot glue that baby just right in there. Okay? So that's how I'm going to reinforce that. That's how I reinforced this leading edge as well. And then, yeah, enough about that. So here we are at a KFM airfoil. So I got some mock materials here, and this is my total wing cord. So this is going to include my Elevon flying surfaces. And if you just wanted to make a KFM, like a plank wing or a straight wing, then it would be built exactly the same way, just as an elevator instead of, excuse me, an aileron instead of an elevon. So here's how we'll do that. Also, I'm gonna show you how I did. I'll put the little reinforcing bit here in the front. Cut your bamboo skewers with a knife like this and break them, rather than using cutters or dikes, because what happens is it fractures the bamboo and you lose the strength wherever you cut it. Alright, so I got a piece to mock up for the leading edge. I'll show you how that's going to go in. So right now what we'll do is we'll do the flat work as I said. I'm going to cut in an elevator surface, aileron or elevon surface right here. And just for the sake of demonstration here, we'll just make it, we'll make it 1.5 inches. And this one you're cutting almost all the way through. So do a score down the full length of the strip or panel, and you want to go just about all the way through, but try not to cut or touch the paper on the back side. It's okay to score and then break it. Okay, that way you're saving the paper on the inside and keeping the strength of the paper. You're going to end up taping over this as well, but it's nice that you have the paper functioning there as well. So the next step is that you got to cut a 45 bevel on here. So I'm using this as a prop over here. Actually, it doesn't need it, but. And so what I do, here's my score cut right there, and I go about 3/8 of an inch back. And here's why: is that you're going to lay your knife down at about a 45 degree. And score lightly, getting through the paper, and now I'm down in to the foam. So what you end up, if you hold back about 3/8 of an inch, you get about a 1/4 inch wide, which is the same thickness. So if you're on an angle, a 45 angle, you'll end up with the blade tip right where it needs to be. So you just pull that little piece right out of there, fold this back. And the next thing I like to do is I'll take the sanding block and run the length of 90 degrees to the wing panel and take off that foam that's up against the paper there. So you just want to see paper right there. See the black line in there? That's the paper, the back side. You want to see that because you want your tape to grab that ideally. That's a technique that I picked up from Ed at Experimental Airlines. Okay, so the next step is, now that we've got this, let's go ahead and tape it up. And I like to use the heavy box tape for hinges, the clear cellophane box tape for the hinges. And you could use the lightweight stuff on the bottom because it's going to flex a little better. That might be a good idea. I mean, to further improve technique, but it doesn't really matter. So then I flip it over, and this is why flat work is cool for doing your hinges, is because you can cut against your cutting surface. And the particular cutting surface that I'm using is called a rotary mat, and it's by Olfa, O-L-F-A, and you can find it at any upholstery, dressmaking fabric store, is what I'm trying to say. Ed at Experimental Airlines uses the free gift cards for a lot of things, one of which is to press out your tape. Makes a much better bond seal. Alright, so here's the trick here is fold that back, lay your tape on a little less than half right there. You can rough cut that off. So with this at about 45-degree angle, this is about 90 degrees right here. So you just start folding it over. You can do that down the whole length, obviously. And again, the gift card comes in handy because what you're going to use is the gift card to press it in against all this foam. The inside part. Flip it over. Trim off the excess. And there you have it. Now, I typically will do my hinges like this, and then whatever covering treatment on top of that would be next. If that makes sense. You know, like if you cover it with duct tape or you cover it with a colored cellophane instead of clear, then your hinges are already reinforced, and then you're going to put a color or something over it, which helps out in strengthening this top one. Now I don't double cover here on the bottom because I find that it gets in the way. It causes a bind on your down inflection. So that would be a negative to me. Just stop your color here on either side of the joint, flush to this edge. That way it's not down inside there and doubling up the pressure, the bind. Okay. So now the next step is putting on your reinforced edge along the whole length of the panel. And again, it's just lightly glued on there. So we'll get some glue action going here. I use one of the hot guns, hotter guns, not a craft style. Craft style smaller ones have their place for sure, but I like it hotter. Now, so you're just buying one gun. If you haven't bought one yet, buy a hotter gun. This one's made by Stanley, and they're pretty easy to find. Yes, I'm cleaning this up while I'm doing video, isn't that? This is the GR60 glue gun by Stanley. It's pretty hot. This stuff comes out of there and it's bubbling, it's boiling. Get it on your skin and you'll make a blister. You can use a wall dimmer switch, a light dimmer switch. You can make yourself a little box with one receptacle in it or two receptacles, and then use a dimmer switch to turn the heat down. Mark some spots on the dimmer itself, or if you do a slider, sliders are nice too. A slider dimmer, and then just make some marks on it to, you know, hot, medium. You know what I'm saying? The reason that you want some cooler temperatures is like if you're doing work with Depron. Depron does melts down really quick. This would just melt the crap out of it. This also melts this core foam as well. So having the paper on is real important, and it works really good, and it gives you a longer working time when it's really hot. When it's against the foam, you want it a little bit cooler because it just melts it away and you have nothing left. So a cooler temperature is nice. One glue gun. Use a dimmer to tune down the temperature a little bit. Okay, so I'm putting on the leading edge reinforcement here. Just a little bit of glue because you just want to tack it in place. It's not going to go anywhere, and the excess glue is going to get in your way. You don't want a big glue glob here that you're going to fold around because it'll misshape the inside a little bit. Is it a big deal? No, not really. But it's just a little technique. You don't need to use that much glue. You're going to save on glue usage. Okay, so the next thing is, where do I score? How do I figure this out? What does this need to be in order to be 50%? So this piece here is actually 12 inches. So this is my main cord, 12 inches. And 50% would be 6 inches. So if you just take, and it'll be sufficient, I'm sure, take a 12-inch wide piece for a 12-inch cord wing. If you're going to make an 8-inch, a thinner wing, an 8-inch or a 10-inch, just take that full cord, and then you're going to cut it, not cut it, but score it, and then fold it in half. So you'll end up at slightly less than 50% because you have the fold. You lose some length right here. So it'll be plenty perfect for you, actually. So find the center, and then we're going to score using the nifty Dollar Tree break-off tip. Now, the blade is just barely showing it. And it, see, yeah, very sharp. So the blade is just barely showing. It's perfect for these score lines because you really don't want to cut into the foam very much. The more you cut into the foam, you're going to weaken this area. Try to just score the paper. Right? See what I'm saying? Even that's a little bit deep, but the point is as shallow as possible, right? Okay, so then we got to find our location here. So we got a 12-inch piece, and we want a 1/2 inch wide. So 6 is the center, and either side of that is 1/4 of an inch. So that's 5 3/4 on this side and 5 3/4 on this side, and that'll give you a 1/2 inch path here in the center. So you can use a straight edge on this. You absolutely have to use a straight edge on this. Say this is a 30-inch long panel. You have to keep that in mind, right? I keep forgetting. Make your score. There you go. Or you can freehand it on these little samples. Peel the tape away, and there you have it. So what Ed uses is a long straight edge, something like this piece right here that I use for my long folds. And let's just pretend that this is a long piece. So what I'll do is I'll put the straight edge almost halfway into it and start pushing up, because you want it to fold in the middle of that space. So once I have it started, then I'll hand fold that all the way over, and this panel is laying here on the table, and I'll press out that leading edge. I'll make it tight like that. So I'll press out the full width of this panel, get it nice and tight like that, and you're done with this. Now, back to the, and that works for the arm and wing or any folded edge. So this makes a perfect horizontal stabilizer as well, because one sheet of this, one layer of this as a horizontal is not going to work for you. Definitely the black, the heavy duty stuff would make a vertical. In fact, a lot of my verticals are done with single layer, but all of my horizontals are done with a double layer in the black. Now, this is heavy, and so I won't be doing that in the future. I'll use the Dollar Tree foam board as my horizontals, and I'll double it like this. Nice built-in leading edge, and then also it'll have a nice reinforcement even on the horizontal stabilizers. Perfect idea for this. Okay, so back to our piece here. So this is going to go in here, but we need the steps. So the steps, you've got your Dollar Tree panel here that's 30 inches wide, give or take, and then you have these strips. And these strips are from the black, the heavy duty stuff. Now you could do this. You could do, if you have access to a table saw, is to make 1/4 inch thick. Well, this is 3/16, so you can do a 3/16, 1/4. I recommend keeping it thinner. Don't go too high, because your step's going to end up being a little too much. So 3/16 by about 3/8 in width by the full length of your material. So now, if you had, let's say you're going to do a 48-inch wing, make 2 pieces of these at 48 inches, say 50 inches long, and those are going to be your spars. So this is a good place if you really got to have spars. You think you just have to do it because you think this is just not going to work. It will and does work. That bird has the Delta has already made and fly it, and I can sit there and bend it over my knee or press wingtips over my knee. I get hardly any flex at all. But you know, if you just dive it in and hit a wing really, really hard, is it going to buckle a little bit? Maybe, yeah. Is it an EPS foam? You know, like these wing wearers and these other wings that are that spongy, plasticky foam? They have their place. Those things are ultra durable. So this is not that. This is a do-it-yourself. I'm going to make it from scratch. I'm not going to buy a kit. I'm going to do what I want to do kind of project. So, you know, DIY. Alright, so this is when we're going to attach these, and they're going to be attached flush. because these are going to show, these edges, these joints, which are right here. Okay? So throw very little, just enough to get it on there. You don't want a big squeeze out. And again, remember, this is a 30-inch wide panel that you've just done, you know, a full run of glue on here. Now you stick this on, you got to be quick about it. A hot gun like this, the glue will still be hot and you'll still be able to bond the two together. If you're using a hobby style, doing 30-inch run like this is going to be cooled off over here at the other end by the time you get ready to put your material down. So you won't actually have a good bond most of the time. So this is exactly how I did that other wing. This is the material that I used, and then I sandwiched it over the core, just like this. Now I've got my steps. Now I have 3 points to glue, and actually, because this is going to be in a panel, you're going to want to glue the leading edge and this trailing edge of the step, and then do this one last. But here's what you have to do that. Push this into position, making sure that it's tight, and you get equal here too. You'd like to have equal, that'd be pretty, right? So once you have that, mark back here. This is where you're going to glue. So go ahead and do two things. Throw a tiny bit of glue here, and a little bit of glue right here. And then go for your mark that you've just done right there. Hold that. Fold it over. And let that set up. So this is going to be down on the table, and you're going to want to press that in a little bit. If you can do this all in one, so you glue, glue, and glue here, and fold it, you're probably going to need help. You're going to need somebody to help you with that. But then the last step is just right here. Fold that over. And you're good to go. Pretty simple, pretty quick, pretty easy. I like the idea that if these are wood as your step-ups, you're building into some spars, some wood spars. Anytime that you use wood, though, you're running a risk of warpage occurring because of exposure. So every surface, every exposed surface needs to be taped off, like this. Here, it doesn't have any tape on it yet. This is pre-taped as per Ed's suggestion and great idea. Is it while the foam board is flat, he pre-tapes in the color that he wants to use. You could use basically anything. You can use a cellophane clear. You can use duct tapes. Over at the Dollar Tree store, they have Dollar Tree or 99-cent store.